We have built a beautiful exterior scene, but we need another scene so that we can go from one scene to the next and learn how to do scene management. For our next scene, let's make it an interior scene. First, save the scene that we currently have open by pressing Ctrl S. Go to File, New Scene. And we're back to a blank, empty scene with just a main camera and a directional light. It's currently untitled, it hasn't been saved yet, so we're going to say File, Save Scene As. I'm going to save it into the Scenes folder again, and I'll call this one Scene 02. I see the name up there, and if I go into the Scenes folder, I see the second scene in there. To switch back and forth between scenes, you just need to double-click on the scene. If I double-click on Scene 1, I am now working on Scene 1. If I double-click on Scene 2, I am now looking in Scene 2. For this scene, we need to build a room, which includes 4 walls, a floor, and a ceiling. I'm not going to use a terrain for this. I'm going to go to Game Object, 3D Object, Cube. This is going to be my floor. So I see I've already got it at position 0, 1, -10. That's not what I want. I'm going to hit that gearbox and reset the position. I'm going to make the size of it 20 meters. The height of it 0.5 meters. On the z-axis, let's make that 16. So this is the size of the room that I'm going to create. I want to remember those numbers because they will help me with the size of the walls. We definitely don't want a whole ton of things named cube, or it would be confusing when we get a lot of objects in here. This is going to be named floor. I'm going to select the floor and press Ctrl D. That duplicates it, so there's 2 of them in the same place here. I can drag it up and you can see that. And I'm going to rename this as ceiling. Now, how high do we want the ceiling to be? Well, if we're thinking of meters and we want it to be a pretty nice sized room, I'm thinking about 7 meters high. I'm going to right click in the hierarchy window, 3D Object, Cube. I'm first going to drag it where I want it and set the scale. So I want the X to be 20 again. I want the Y to be about 7, and I want the Z to be 0.5. That's going to be the thickness of all my walls. You can see it's not quite the right size. It needs another 0.5 to be at the right height, so 7.5 is really the height that we need here. That's if the walls were going to be on the outside. If you want to put the walls under the ceiling and the floor, then you would want to use 6.5, and then you could slide it inside of there. So how do we get this exactly where we want it? There's a nice little trick for this. I'm going to hold the V key down to grab a vertex, and you can see as I move my cursor around, different spots are being lit up. I want that corner spot right there. And I click and drag, and it lets me snap it to another corner. But actually we want this back corner. So I'm going to hold V down again, grab that back corner, and snap it to that corner. That should put it exactly where we want it. With that wall selected, I'm going to rename it. I'll just call this wall 1. Selecting it again, I can press Ctrl D to get a duplicate wall that I can slide over to the other side. And again, using V, I can grab this back corner and snap it in where I want it to be. I'm going to rename that to Wall 2, and now I'm ready for the other walls. Right click, 3D Object, Cube. We'll get it kind of in the right spot to begin with. I'll name it Wall 3. This time I want the X to be 0.5, the Y to be 6.5, and the Z to be 16. Be pretty close to what we want. I'm going to lift it up, get a good look at this. So it's a little bit too wide. Instead of 16, I probably want to take 0.5 off this side and 0.5 off this side, so that would make it 15. I think that will end up fitting in there perfectly once we slide it in. Hold V down. Grab that back corner and snap it to that corner right there. We're missing a wall. So I'm going to grab this wall, press Ctrl D to duplicate that wall. and rename that wall to wall 4. Let's organize this a little bit. The room is starting to have many parts. I'm going to make an empty game object and name this room and drag them into the room. Now we can collapse and open that whenever we want. I can add another empty game object inside of room and name this walls. Just drag the wall 1, wall 2, wall 3, and wall 4 into walls and leave the ceiling and floor out. I need to be able to run the game and run around inside the room, so I need to add a first-person controller again. Going to Assets, Standard Assets, Characters, First-Person Character, Prefabs. I'm going to use the FPS controller again. I'm not going to put him as a part of the room because maybe my FPS controller will eventually leave the room, but I do want to make sure he's positioned inside that room to begin with and that he is above the ground. And when I run the game, I am now inside this room with very boring colors. I'm going to run around and get a feel for how big the room is. Stop the game. Let's decorate the room a little bit now. I'm going to go back to my assets. I'm hoping that my medieval buildings assets will have some good textures that I could use inside the building. That's pretty good. I think I like that one. If I run the game, run up to that wall, see what it looks like close. Alright, maybe that'll work. Once you have the material on your object, if you click on it, you'll see that material over in your components of the object. If I hit the little drop down, I can see properties that I can use to mess with that shader. Notice there's a tiling under main maps and a tiling under secondary maps. Let's play around with this a little bit. Under the main maps, I'm going to change the tiling to 5 and 5 again. It's actually a little bit hard to see, but if I run it now and run up to the wall, you can just see it's much smaller. For this, I actually don't like it being that small. Maybe I'll make it 2 by 2 and see how that looks. That feels about right to me. I'm going to add that same material to the other walls. But this time I'm just going to drag it to the hierarchy components. Let's try the planks for the ceiling. And I'm going to tile those to be a little bit smaller. Use 3 and 3. Run the game. Look up. It's looking okay. And I want some type of dirt floor, I think. Let's see if we have anything in here. It's not really what I want. I think I'll look and see what materials come with standard assets. And there's this grass rocky albedo. Let's try that one for a moment. Run it. Alright, so I think the tile on the bottom is just way too large. I'm going to press escape and stop it. Click on the floor, change the tiling of this to be 5 by 5. If I run it again, it looks a little bit better. And maybe that's the tiling I want for this room. We also need a door so that we can leave the room when we're ready. I'm actually going to create this door similarly to the way we created the room. So I'm going to create an empty game object and call it door and put it inside of my room. Inside the door I'm going to create 3 beams from cubes. The top beam is what I'm shaping right now. Placing it up against the wall. Creating the next beam, which I think will be my left beam. Shaping it and positioning it. I'm going to duplicate that one to make my right beam. And I found some textures inside the Medieval Buildings Materials folder. And now I'm creating a doorway, which will go inside the beams. The doorway is going to allow me to add a different texture, for one, but also, and more importantly, it will allow me to add a trigger so that when I hit that door, it will load a new scene. We'll do that in a later video. For now, let's just go ahead and add one more texture. I'm going to get this texture online, I believe. Of course, you could have gotten a much nicer door using a 3D modeling program or by finding what's available on the asset store.